You felt it this morning. Maybe it was a flash of anger in traffic. Maybe it was a sudden wave of sadness for no reason you could name. Maybe it was the quiet unease you get in a crowded room, even though nothing is wrong. You called it your mood, you called it your personality, but the real answer is far stranger. Those feelings did not start with you. They did not start with your parents or your childhood or the culture you grew up in. They started in a creature that had no name for them at all. Your emotions are millions of years old. Think about that for a moment. The feeling in your chest right now, the low hum of anxiety or the flicker of hope, has a history so deep that dinosaurs were already extinct before it fully formed. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett spent decades studying how emotions actually work inside the brain. What she found overturned almost everything scientists thought they knew. Emotions are not reactions, they are predictions. Your brain is not waiting for something to happen and then deciding how to feel. It is running a constant simulation, drawing on billions of years of ancestral experience, guessing what is about to happen next. The feeling always comes first. The reason comes after. That is not a metaphor. That is biology. Your brain is not one brain. It is three, stacked on top of each other across evolutionary time. The deepest layer, the one you share with every vertebrate alive today, is sometimes called the reptilian brain. It controls your heartbeat, your breathing, your fight-or-flight response. It does not think, it reacts. It kept fish alive 350 million years ago. It keeps you alive today. Wrapped around it is the limbic system, the layer you share with every mammal on Earth. This is where emotional memory lives. This is where fear gets its weight, where love gets its warmth, where the feeling that something is wrong or something is right first becomes something you can almost name. And wrapped around that is the cortex, the new layer, the part that plans and reasons and talks. When you explain why you feel the way you feel, that is the cortex speaking. But the feeling itself came from somewhere older. Neuroscientist Paul MacLean first described this layered architecture in the 1960s. He called it the triune brain. Later scientists refined his model, but the core truth held. You carry the emotional machinery of creatures who lived before land animals existed. The fear you feel in the dark is older than trees. The rush of pleasure you get from food, from warmth, from physical contact, was already millions of years old by the time the first hominid stood upright on the African savanna. Here is something no one tells you. Your brain does not know what century it is. Right now, as you read this, your nervous system is running the same threat detection software it ran when your ancestors were prey. Psychologist Joseph Ledoux spent his career mapping the fear circuit in the brain. What he found was a pathway so fast it bypasses conscious thought entirely. A signal goes from your senses to the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, before it ever reaches the part of you that can reason about it. Your body is already responding before your mind has a chance to ask whether the threat is real. That is not a flaw. That was survival. In a world where the thing in the tall grass might be a predator, hesitation was death. Your ancestors did not have time to think. The ones who felt fear first and thought second are the ones who lived. You are here because of that reflex. But you do not live in the tall grass. You live in a world of meetings and social media and traffic jams and late bills. Your amygdala does not know the difference. It cannot tell a deadline from a lion. It processes the signal, fires the alarm, and floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate rises. Your muscles tighten. Your digestion slows. All of it preparing you for a physical threat that is not there. That is what modern anxiety is. It is ancient survival software running in an environment it was never designed for. You have probably heard of the fight-or-flight response, but there are others. Researcher Stephen Porges developed the polyvagal theory, a framework that maps how the nervous system responds to safety and threat. He found that the human body has not one but three distinct states it cycles through depending on perceived danger. The first is social engagement, calm, connected, able to think and communicate. The second is fight or flight, activated, charged, ready to act. The third is the oldest of all, a freeze response inherited from reptiles, a state of collapse and shutdown that kicks in when the threat feels unsurvivable. When you feel numb, when you disconnect, when you cannot move or think or speak, that is not weakness. That is your oldest ancestor taking over. These states were written into your nervous system before your species existed, and yet you experience them as personal. You think, I am an anxious person. I am someone who shuts down. I am someone who overreacts. You build an identity around responses that were coded into your biology hundreds of millions of years ago. You are not broken. You are ancient. Consider what this means for the emotions you are most ashamed of. Jealousy, envy, the territorial anger that rises when someone encroaches on what you consider yours. These are not signs of immaturity. They are the emotional residue of species who survive by defending resources. Your great-great ancestor, some small warm-blooded mammal scrambling through the undergrowth of the early Cenozoic, felt something like jealousy when a rival approached its food. That animal is not here anymore, but its circuitry is inside you. Or think about loneliness. Not the poetic kind, the physical kind. The kind that sits in your chest like something heavy and makes everything feel slightly wrong. Researcher John Cacioppo spent 20 years studying social pain and found that loneliness triggers the same neural pathways as physical pain. It is not a metaphor that a broken heart hurts. The same regions of the brain that process a twisted ankle process social rejection. Because for your ancestors, being cut off from the group was not sad, it was fatal. Alone in the wild, a human being lasts days. The pain of loneliness is the nervous system screaming a survival warning in the only language it knows. Your emotions are a survival archive. Every single feeling you have ever had maps back to something your ancestors needed to stay alive. Disgust kept them away from contaminated food. Awe made them cautious around forces bigger than themselves. Curiosity drove them toward new resources. Love bound them to people they needed to survive with. Grief encoded the loss of those people as something to be avoided in the future. None of these emotions were invented. They were selected. The ancestors who felt them survived. The ones who did not are gone. This is what researchers call the affective primacy hypothesis. The idea, first articulated by psychologist Robert Zajonc, is that emotional responses are primary, that they preceded conscious thought in evolutionary terms and still precede it in real time. You feel before you think. You always have. You always will. The reason you give for your emotion is almost always constructed after the fact. A story your cortex tells to explain something the limbic system already decided. You are not the author of your emotions. You are the narrator. You are telling a story about feelings that have already happened, in a language that evolution invented, using a brain that is millions of years old. That changes how you might hold what you feel. The next time anxiety visits you, you might recognize it for what it is. Not a sign that something is wrong with you. A signal that somewhere in your ancient circuitry, the threat detection system is running, doing exactly what it evolved to do. You can work with it instead of against it. You can tell it calmly that the lion is not real. Your brain will not always believe you. Ancient things do not update quickly, but you can learn the language it speaks. The next time you feel a rush of love so strong it frightens you, you might understand that you are feeling an emotion that kept your species alive through ice ages, migrations, wars, and losses too many to count. The next time grief flattens you, you might recognize it not as evidence of damage, but as evidence that something mattered deeply, which is itself a survival signal. The next time anger rises faster than thought, you might see it for what it is. Not you, not your failure, but a circuit that is hundreds of millions of years older than language. You think your emotions are happening to you right now, but they have been happening since long before now was even a word. This morning you felt something. It had no name until you gave it one. But the feeling itself was ancient, passed forward through every ancestor who lived long enough to pass anything forward at all. You are not just experiencing an emotion, you are continuing one. And every creature in your long evolutionary lineage that felt something like what you feel today is the reason you are here to feel it.